Okay.
All right, let's have our roll call, please.
Chair Fresco,
Here.
Vice Chair Cafagiri,
Here?
Member Bozo,
Here.
Member Brock,
Here.
Member Denny,
Here.
Member Gruber,
Here.
Member Arusto,
Here.
Member Summers,
Here.
Member Upton.
Here.
Thank you. So our next item is about correspondence from the public. Since our last meeting, we have received a total of 146 letters from the public. We received them from staff via email before the meeting, and they are in our packets here today, and they're available to the public in 3 binders at the reception desk. 145 of those new letters are in support of athletic fields on the Civic site, and 1 requests that Council not approve the ECEC on public land. As of noon yesterday, the Civic Working Group has received 521 letters in support of athletic fields. So that's correspondence. And now for our workshop. I'm so glad you're all here. I hope more of you come. I like it when there's a lot of people. So today, in today's workshop, our consultants, HR&A, will update us on the results of the last workshop and kind of give us a little review of where we are up to this point. And then I will introduce to you the framework for our guiding principles that we'll be discussing in our small groups. In addition to the guiding principles, the Civic Working Group is also in the process of drafting some recommendations for City Council that would help further define what's possible for the Civic Auditorium and its site. Those are posted on the wall, and we invite you to write your comments and suggestions directly on those sheets when we take breaks. So don't forget to check those out. After the presentations, we'll break you up into groups to talk about the guiding principles. Your group leaders will report back on what was said to the whole room, and then you guys will have a chance to speak directly to the Civic Working Group about the guiding principles. And then before we adjourn, the Civic Working Group members will each have a turn to speak also. Restrooms are in the hallway behind me. Staff can provide you with parking validations. And I give you Paul Silverin of HR&A.
Thank you, Nina. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you back here on another June gloom day. But we hope to brighten your attitude about a very exciting opportunity at the Civic Auditorium site as the morning progresses. Could we get the light on in front here, please?
Is this going to be the same as that? Is this going to be the same as that?
Yeah. It'll be the same on both screens, but for some reason, there we go. Just warming up the bulb. Good. Again, I'm Paul Silverin with HR&A Advisors. We're a consultant to the city staff and the Civic Working Group to help both of them respond to the council mandate to think about how to save the Civic Auditorium and to use it as the anchor of a mixed-use arts and cultural district, considering the great opportunity that that sea of parking space out there offers to us. Before we get into some of the details for the day, I just wanted to review the process that the Civic Working Group has gone through so that those of you who may be new to what we're talking about today will have some sense of the road that's been traveled over the course of the last 18 months. The City Council charged the Civic Working Group with a set of tasks, which are illustrated on this slide. The working group, as you can see, is a 9-member group with very diverse backgrounds, representing a lot of community and professional interests, and some of the members on the working group represent some of the city's boards and commissions. The City Council asked the working group to draft a vision for the cultural and community use of the Civic site, explore appropriate and compatible uses around the Civic Auditorium in order to try to figure out how to complement future uses at the Civic and to figure out a way to fund the renovation and rehabilitation of the Civic, and specifically to look at a variety of financing options that would be required to do so. The council also charged the Civic Working Group with looking at a variety of potential for open space on the site, and to convene a community process like we're engaged in today to solicit feedback from the public to make sure that there's a good cross-section of opinion about how to proceed. And then finally, the council asked for the working group to provide recommendations, specific recommendations, for a vision and feasible renovation options for the Civic and the ultimate build-out of the mixed-use arts and cultural district. For the last 18 months or so, the Civic Working Group has been meeting on a regular basis at monthly meetings. They've considered a group of so-called givens, which are a set of facts about the Civic Auditorium itself, some of the guidelines embedded in the historic preservation certification of the Civic, facts about parking, and a variety of other issues that are important for them to consider as sort of baselines. The Civic Working Group has looked carefully over all the different options for the Civic Auditorium itself, analyzed with our help a variety of arts and cultural uses that might be placed on the site, looked at a variety of parking issues, considered a wide range of open space opportunities, and discussed at length, both within its own meetings and through a series of public workshops, which I think many of you in the room have attended so far, what a compatible group of uses might be for the site. So there's been a lot of opportunity for the working group to gather public input as it moved along, and a lot of very active and productive discussion at their monthly meetings. One of the things that the working group organized in order to obtain public feedback as it moved through its process was a series of 3 public workshops. Today is the third of the 3 workshops. The first one, conducted last September, was more about focusing on the opportunity that the site presented, and we'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. The second one was focused on some of the very complicated trade-offs between preferred uses and how to pay for both the renovation of the Civic and to build and operate the mixed-use arts and cultural district that is under consideration. Today, we're going to bring the results of all that information together, expressed through a set of guiding principles that the Civic Working Group has drafted to present to the City Council. And the primary intent of today's workshop is to get your feedback on the current draft of those principles. As to the opportunity, the Civic site in whole is about 10 acres in scale. It's a very large area available for reconceptualization, one of the most significant opportunities within all of Santa Monica, which, as you know, is just a relatively small 8.3 square miles. And having a 10-acre opportunity to think about here is unusual. At its heart, of course, is the Civic Auditorium, which unfortunately has been shuttered for the last couple of years because of the inability to use certain redevelopment funds, which went away with the state mandated demise of redevelopment in 2011, which has been extremely unfortunate. The Civic Auditorium, of course, is a significantly treasured resource in the city of Santa Monica. It has a rich history over the last 56 years of its life, hosting a lot of significant events in the community. Many people in the room, I'm sure, have attended both community and other artistic events, particularly concerts, over the years. And so saving the Civic Auditorium is perhaps the most significant outcome from this process, and figuring out how to do that in a way that meets the community's needs, is financially viable, and allows the Civic to serve as an anchor for other activities on the site is extremely important. The site itself is unfortunately a dividing line. The 10 acres of the civic site sits between downtown and the Ocean Park community, and the fact that it has been relatively vacant and unused, particularly in the last couple of years, is kind of a scar on the urban fabric of Santa Monica. And one of the things that I think the working group and many members of the public, including, I believe, many of you in the room today, would like to see is an opportunity to knit this site back into the urban fabric of Santa Monica. And obviously there are a lot of questions about how to do that, but it presents an amazing opportunity to fill in the blank that the Civic Auditorium site represents. As many of you know, there's been a lot of very interesting and exciting new activity around the Civic site, which begins to establish the possibility for important new connections, ranging from the new development at Tongva Park and Ken Genzer Square in front of City Hall, the new residential development next to the Rand Corporation headquarters building, and of course the opportunity presented by the opening of the Expo line, which, if everything stays on time, hopefully will happen in the first quarter of next year. These are very important new activities all around the edges of the Civic Auditorium, and one of the key questions that the Civic Working Group has been trying to address is how to integrate all that new energy and activity and liveliness with this vacant space that we have with this largely sea of surface parking and the blank space that it represents adjacent to downtown Santa Monica, and reconnect downtown and Ocean Park. The basic idea is to use the Civic Auditorium as the anchor for a mixed-use arts and cultural district. Okay, workshop number 2. How many in the room attended the second workshop? Excellent. So the fact that you did and have that experience going in today's workshop will be very helpful. We've had an opportunity to talk about the results from workshop number 2 at some length with the Civic Working Group meeting members at their monthly meetings, but I want to highlight for you some of the key results that came out of that workshop. And there's lots more detail about this on the city's website if you're interested in seeing more detail about it. But as I said, the 10-acre site presents a very significant opportunity for the city of Santa Monica. The auditorium itself is around 74,000 square feet of space inside the shell of this historic structure. It had a seating capacity of around 3,000 seats, depending on how it was configured. And of course, there was this sea of about almost 1,000 parking spaces on the land around it. But it is not a completely empty vessel. There are commitments of those 10 acres that have been made. Both, obviously, the Civic Auditorium isn't going anywhere. And so when you take out the footprint of the Civic and the surrounding areas that go with it on the edges of the property, and the new Early Childhood Education Center over in the corner of the site next to the existing surface parking lot, there's really only about 6 acres of the site left over for new uses. If you take out of that an allowance for something like 20% of the site for just general circulation, for sidewalks, walking paths, and the need to sort of get around the site, the residual area available for something new to happen on the property is more like 4 acres. In workshop number 2, we developed, with the assistance of our colleagues at MetroQuest, as many of you know, a fairly sophisticated and interesting online tool that allowed the participants at the workshop and any member of the public after the workshop who was interested to begin to wrestle with the kinds of trade-offs that the working group itself and eventually the city council will need to make in terms of how to balance their preferred uses at the site, how to reimagine the Civic Auditorium as an amazing new facility, and integrate that with arts and cultural uses around the Civic Auditorium. How to do that both in terms of the preferred uses, integrate it with an appropriate amount of open space and configuration of open space, and most importantly, how to pay for all that, both the construction cost and equally, if not more important, the long-term annual operating costs for the years to come. Very complicated set of questions, not easy to figure out. And since there's no specific plan at this point in the process, this is all just conceptual. So there's no set of architectural illustrations for what to do. This is all at a very highly conceptual point in the process as a way of trying to understand community preferences. So we use this trade-off tool as a way of allowing the public to wrestle with exactly the same set of issues that all levels of decision-making also have to deal with. And it turned out to be, I think, very useful. When we structured the trade-off tool, what's illustrated on this screen were the range of different uses and opportunities that people had to work with. So there were 3 different concepts for the potential future use of the Civic Auditorium. There were a range of public land uses, arts and cultural uses, and open space options, ranging from a sports field to various amounts of acreage of open space that could be either passive or actively used. There were a whole range of potential private land uses that were included in the mix because, after all, financing the renovation of the Civic, which is going to be a very significant expenditure, no matter who undertakes it, and building and operating the other kinds of arts and cultural uses that might surround the Civic Auditorium will be very expensive. And one of the things that may need to happen to help pay for that is to integrate some amount of private land use on the site in order to generate ground rent revenue and tax revenue that could be used to offset some of those costs. The specifics of that, the amounts and all that are, of course, still subject to lots more discussion. But for purposes of the trade-off tool, we included a wide range of retail, dining, and other land uses that people could pick from so that they could begin to see what some of the implications are for balancing financing with their preferred uses for the site. And then, Thomas, go back one. And then at the end, in the last column, in addition to a modest amount of private development on the site as a potential revenue generator, we also identified a series of other potential funding sources that could be used, ranging from a general obligation bond, if the 2/3 of the voters in Santa Monica would support it, a ticket tax from admissions in the Civic for one particular version of the use of the Civic, and a couple of others, all with limitations that we believe make the use of those choices realistic, at least for initial discussion purposes. As I said, because there's no hard and fast plan for the site at this point, this is all conceptual. In order to structure the trade-off exercise, we had to make a series of assumptions. We believe that the assumptions that we used were reasonable, very well researched, and appropriate for the kind of conceptual discussion that we were having. And some of the key ones that we embedded in the model are sketched out on this slide. So we made some assumptions about how much of the site had to be reserved for just basic circulation. We came up with estimates of how much land area each of the arts and cultural and private uses might take up on the site, so that there was some ability to mix and match those within the actual physical constraints of the site. We made some estimates of parking. The judgment was that the parking should not be on the surface of the site like it is now, but should in fact be subterranean, underground. And so we made a series of assumptions about how that could be accommodated, and estimated that you could actually get about 2,300 spaces of parking below grade on a couple of levels. But of course, that has a price tag that goes with it as well. We also then made a series of estimates for the cost of renovating the Civic Auditorium under 3 different scenarios that the Civic Working Group discussed at length. And we made other estimates of the construction costs for other compatible arts and cultural districts. It's important to note, when you look at the results of the trade-off tool, that this is not the result of a polling exercise. This is not this was not a random sample of opinion, and therefore one needs to be cautious in how the results are interpreted. They are a reflection of the opinion of those people who chose to participate, but they are by no means a random sample. That said, we believe that the trade-off tool results provide some very important and useful information for the Civic Working Group in framing its recommendations to the Council. And I now want to summarize for you at a high level what some of those results were. We received a total of nearly 1,700 responses from people who participated in the Saturday-Sunday workshop at the end of January and on February 1st, and online after the workshop. The participants were very specifically asked to try to balance their preferences for the arts and cultural uses and private land uses on the site with the amount of acreage in line with the parking requirements that went with those choices, and with the cost of construction and the cost of operating the facility. Thank you, dear. And so one of the things that we tried to do is to look at the overall results. But as you can see, for a variety of reasons, not everybody elected or was able to try to balance the capital and operating budget, capital meaning construction. Not everybody was able to balance their preferences for land uses with how to pay for it. And yet, a fairly significant number of people figured out how to finance the annual operating cost for their preferred uses, and a smaller number figured out how to balance everything. And so when we sliced and diced the results of the trade-off tool, we tried to look at the expressed preferences in several different categories that respond to what people did. And so we're going to summarize the results in a couple of different ways, and I'll try to indicate the distinctions between the categories of respondents so you get a sense of what may be driving what. First, as to the choices between the Civic, after a lot of internal discussion, the working group settled on 3 potential concepts for how the Civic might be reused. The first, which we refer to as Civic 1, would be a privately operated entertainment and arts complex, much like the proposal that the Nederlander organization negotiated with the city before the redevelopment tax increment money vaporized, unfortunately. So that is essentially the same concept, which we refer to as Civic 1. Civic 2 would be a very different kind of use of the Civic, which would be operated as a nonprofit performing arts center with a somewhat more local, but potentially some regional attractions as well, but a very different mix of potential performing arts activities than would be provided under a privately operated approach as in Civic number 1. Civic 3, the third concept for the Civic, would be a much more locally focused, community-oriented set of activities that might be managed either by the city itself or by some other public entity, but would not be the sort of thing that would attract, Broadway touring shows or major concerts in the way that the Civic historically had been used. So these were the 3 general concepts for the Civic. And as you can see, regardless of which group of respondents we're talking about, Civic 1, or the privately operated use of the Civic for a entertainment and arts complex, was a clear preference. The gray bars, as you can see with the legend at the bottom, represent the views of all people who responded, whether or not they were able to balance the budget. The dark blue bar in each case, and in the succeeding slides that I'll talk about, represent the opinion of those people who also were able to balance the construction budget, that they figured out how to mix a limited amount of private development and other resources in order to pay for their preferred mix of uses. The light blue bars in each case represent the opinion of those who not only figured out how to balance the budget, but also stayed within the land use constraints. Because we had some people that, picked all kinds of things, but, it came up to 10 or 12 or 15 acres, and we only have 4 to work with. So the light blue bars represent those people who really were successful in the sort of highest degree of trade-off choices about financing, land constraints, and uses. So we think it's useful to sort of think about the responses in those categories. But clearly, Civic 1, or the privately operated entertainment and arts complex, was the clear choice among just about everybody who responded. In terms of the other arts and cultural uses, this slide represents the opinion of everybody who responded. And it was clear here that there was a very strong preference for more performing arts and cultural uses, and not so much for fine arts, that is, museums. So there was a very strong preference among those who participated in the trade-off exercise to focus more on the performing arts. In terms of open space, there was a very strong representation by people who were advocating for maintaining the field space that is currently shown in the Civic Center specific plan. But there were lots of opinions besides that for varying amounts of other kinds of passive and active open space of various sizes. But even if we isolate the people who preferred the field space, we took note of those who actually successfully figured out how to pay for it. And among those, it is noteworthy that about 84% of those respondents who chose the field also preferred Civic 1, that is the privately operated arts and entertainment complex, and a significant percentage of them elected to include a boutique hotel as one of the uses on the site to help pay for everything. In terms of the private land uses that people were willing to consider in order to produce revenue to pay for the mixed-use arts and cultural district, there were strong preferences among all categories of participants for retail, various kinds of dining, and lesser support for residential, office, and boutique hotel, and even less so for a more standard full-service hotel. But clearly, particularly among those who successfully balanced financial resources with their land use preferences, there was an interest in seeing at least some forms of private development to help make the whole thing work. In addition to some amount of private land uses on the site, we had, as I said, introduced a number of other kinds of financing techniques that might be used. Now, this is not the full spectrum of everything that might be possible, but again, because we're working at a very high conceptual level and not with a very finely tuned architectural plan for the site, which would have allowed us to look at historic preservation tax credits and a variety of other things, which we simply can't do at a high conceptual level, we did, nevertheless, identify a series of other financing techniques for both construction costs, or capital as we refer to it, and long-term operating costs, including an annual subsidy from the city's general fund for operations, but not more than $1 million a year, because that was the judgment of city administration about what the likely maximum would be. Of course, it's always that will ultimately be a choice of the council, but for purposes of the trade-off game, we capped it, and we capped various other financing techniques based on our analysis of what looked like it might be possible. But across all the choices for financing, the general obligation bond, which requires a 2/3 vote of city residents, got very strong support, as long as private fundraising like naming rights or other forms of private philanthropy on the construction side, and then the possibility of raising money from philanthropy for long-term operating costs, particularly for the other arts and cultural uses, got very strong support as well. Okay, in addition to all the feedback that we got through the workshop, the Civic Working Group has studiously tried to assemble public input in a number of other ways. All of the workshops allowed people who participated to provide their opinions through online comments and surveys. We, as you heard at the beginning of the meeting, have received a lot of comments through emails and letters over the course of the last 18 months. People had opportunities to come to the working group's meetings on a monthly basis and offer comment, which many did. All of the workshops included lots of comments that were written down, comment cards provided, and so forth. And we have assembled and studiously inventoried and maintained all of that information so it all becomes part of the public record going forward to the City Council. And in addition, the Civic Working Group also considered a lot of background research that we provided them on similar kinds of venues and arts and cultural districts from around the U.S. and in a few cases overseas. And they also took a field trip to see the Pasadena Civic Center, which some of you may be familiar with, which is roughly the same scale as our Civic Auditorium, but is operated and offers activity in a somewhat different way. So that kind of summarizes where we have been over the last 18 months, what we've been thinking about collectively, both the Civic Working Group and the community. And it brings us to today's workshop, which is really focused, as we said at the outset, on a set of guiding principles that the Civic Working Group has drafted as the primary recommendation that they will be sending to the City Council. And what we want to do next is have Nina Fresco, the chair of the working group, summarize for you what those guiding principles are, and then we'll have a lot of time to talk about them in more detail after the break. Do you want to stand or do you want this free?
I want to hold it. I'm not quite as smooth as Paul. I have to use notes. The Civic Working Group was charged by City Council to come up with a financially feasible plan to revive the Civic Auditorium as a hub of a cultural campus. The source of funding and the resulting degree of need for income to repay loans is what really will drive which community-identified preferences are finally implemented. On one end is the conservative approach. In this scenario, private interests through new revenue-generating development have the ability to acquire and make good on loans necessary to rehabilitate the Civic Auditorium and end up with enough of a profit to want to get involved in the first place. This approach would not mean that the whole site would be overtaken by development under any circumstances. It would definitely include some open space. At the opposite end, a benefactor steps in and gives the city all the funds needed to rehabilitate the auditorium and do whatever the people of Santa Monica think is best with the rest of the site, regardless of cost or potential revenue. This scenario is pretty much where we were in 2011 when redevelopment funds were allocated to move forward with the Civic Center Joint Use Project with the school district and with Niederlander for the auditorium. So the Civic Working Group has developed guiding principles that have identified all the moving parts that would be adjusted one way or another based on where the funding ends up coming from and which variations would be acceptable for proposals. Each moving part is addressed, clarifying the outer limits for the conservative approach while reinforcing advocacy for the features that have the most support in the community. In your groups later today, you will weigh in on the details for each of these areas. They cover the Civic Auditorium, the idea of the cultural campus, the open space, and the financial considerations. Here are the main concepts. Preserve and rehabilitate the landmark Civic Auditorium. A path to bringing the Civic Auditorium back to life as a performing arts venue that is based on the economic realities outlined above was the prime directive given to the Civic Working Group by City Council. Create a vibrant cultural and community hub around the Civic Auditorium. Since the earliest version of the Civic Center's specific plan in 1993, the Civic Auditorium site is described as enhancing the auditorium uses. In this section, we articulate the range of uses supported by the public that would create the synergy we all seek. Consider private land uses that support and enhance the cultural campus. In the event that private land uses are proposed for the site, they should be limited to uses that are synergistic with a cultural center and are compatible in use and scale with the adjacent Ocean Park neighborhood and the Civic Auditorium structure. Create a flow between the Civic Auditorium site and the surrounding community. In 1957, the design of the Civic Auditorium site was facing inward, blocking out the neighborhood. This is no longer acceptable. There are many exciting things going on all around the site, and this is our opportunity to correct the connectivity issue to benefit both the Civic and those other areas. Include open space on the site. Open space is a requirement of any proposal for the site. It can be anything from an athletic field to a passive verdant park space. But if funding for the project has to be supported by internal site revenues, the amount of open space might vary. Generate innovative and financially sustainable proposals for the Civic and its site. As projects become more expensive and funding becomes tighter, we need to start innovating funding approaches. Partnerships, consortiums, and philanthropic campaigns are all approaches that can lead to accomplishment of our favorite priorities for the site. We encourage proposals to include ways to make that happen. And finally, there are recommendations to City Council. In addition to the guiding principles, which describe the range of variation proposals must fall in, the Civic Working Group felt that City Council has some work to do as well. For example, a feasibility study for a general obligation bond. While such a bond would impact everyone's property taxes, and renters would also be affected, it would give us more freedom to use the site in ways that do not generate revenue. We also recommended that the city look into partnerships, consortiums, philanthropic campaigns, and alternate forms of public funding. A partial list of the draft recommendations is posted here today, and we encourage you to add your comments to those sheets of paper there directly. When we go into our groups, we will be asking you to let us know if you think the guiding principles address community priorities for the Civic Auditorium and the surrounding site. Tell us what you think we should add or change. So for now, let's take 10 minutes and grab a snack, check out the draft priorities over there for council, and then we'll get started.
Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Esmeralda Garcia from MIG, one of our consultants on this project.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So there was a lot of conversation. Now you get to share what your group discussed with the rest of the group. So we're going to call up the groups one by one and just share with us your broad topics, broad ideas. If there were different perspectives shared within the group, we want to find out about those. And if you can maybe highlight the one or two key points within the different guiding principle areas. We're going to start with group number 5, Yao. I think we brought all of the easel pads or all the flip chart pads up here, and we're mic'd up here, so there's wire, so please be careful. And then Ryan will be capturing notes here, and as you come up, we'll be asking for new comments or anything that's additional that's not already up on the wall graphic. So we can hold that up for you, Yao, as I'll hand the mic to you.
Oh, okay. Let me put this down.
You want to hand it to me? Oh, you can just put it right there.
How's that?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Okay, table 5, way in the back there. We had a really wild, far-ranging conversation, so the folks at table 5 are going to have to yell out support here to make sure that we cover all of the important basic concepts. We sort of segued back and forth in all of this between the financial stuff and the actual 1, 2, 3, and so forth. We didn't wait until the very end for that. So as part of the green sheet, section 1, preserve and rehabilitate the Civic Auditorium itself, we did have a focus on the financial challenges of that, and a couple of people at our table who are more expert in this area talked extensively about investment tax credits for the landmarked, to be attracted because of the landmarked elements of the Civic Auditorium. And there was some thought that it might even bring in anywhere from $15 to $20 million worth of tax credits to this effort if we were to go in that direction. The facade, of course, the iconic facade of the auditorium was considered very high priority in this effort. There was some disagreement about the value of the landmarked floor in the auditorium itself, and whether it might be better to sacrifice the floor in order to bring the cost of rehab down and to celebrate the external facade and push that out as the attractor for the tax credits. Let's see. Oh, and capitalizing on the auditorium's history. There was some thought on the sort of philanthropy and the smaller attraction of funds that on an ongoing basis we might want to reach out to all of the performers and shows and so forth, the users of the auditorium over the 53-year history, and have some art created by them and about their work here at the auditorium over the years, and use that for sales and publicity for the auditorium going forward. Okay, table 5, is that okay?
That's pretty much it.
Okay. All right, here we go. In section 2, the cultural and community hub around the auditorium itself, there was a lot of agreement that we already have the hub, the elements of the hub around the auditorium, that in fact the Samo High facilities, cultural facilities, create some of that, and so it's a natural place to have the hub concept. There were a couple of people who really emphasized the need to bring the museum back to this area, not necessarily on this property, but perhaps one idea was the office building on the southwest corner of Pico and Main, that might, in the long run, be returned to an art exhibit use. There was a comment about finding a space close by, not necessarily on this property, to establish a library/cultural center to focus on Black and Latino culture and history. Yes, sir.
Also brought up that the same building on Pico and then used as a hotel.
Got it. Yes. That was the other use. The office building on the southwest corner of Pico and Main clearly is not a favorite. That's for sure. And finally, the notion that the 4th and Pico area, the parking lot area here, is, in the broader vision, should be more of a breathing space between the downtown Santa Monica uses and the Ocean Park residential neighborhood, and we should keep that in mind as we consider various uses. 3, the cultural campus itself. Again, we talked about the corner of 4th and Pico. Michael had the notion of the area between the freeway. Picture this: between the freeway and the high school campus, and between 4th and Lincoln. You know, that feeder road that runs along the freeway. That perhaps that has potential being converted into the another sports field alternative that is adjacent to the high school property. So that was a notion that was brought forward. The notion of, okay, how are we going to pay for all of this and so forth? The emphasis was, the bigger the tent you create, the more people you invite with their interests, invite into this space, the better chance you have of building a coalition that can win a bond campaign. Because pitting open space versus commercial uses and so forth is not the way to get the public funding authorized and winning the hearts of the voters. So we do need to consider as broad a coalition as possible to make a bond campaign feasible. There were a couple of other comments about restaurants are fine to support the space but limit the number, and the point was made that performers at your performing arts center are not wealthy people, so we need to figure out a lower cost way of housing them when they're here performing. The flow issue, there's just a lot of consensus about a bridge over 4th Street that connects the campus to the sort of the center of this side of 4th Street, particularly the sports area. So, and everybody seemed to find that very appealing. There was also a wanting to emphasize the need to be very conscious of providing circulation for non-auto vehicles. So circulation for your feet and for bicycles, skateboards, and so forth that can come through the high school campus and through the Civic Auditorium spaces. Then, And in the open space area, again, the bridge over 4th Street was emphasized. An interesting notion about the sports field. If you had one here sort of occupying the 4th and Pico corner, the notion was put forward of sinking it by about 4 or 5 feet so that you could have seating that could then convert in the evenings to more of a outdoor performance type area. There's obviously that trade-off between impacting the cost of putting in the underground parking and sinking 4 or 5 feet, but that's a trade-off that ought to be explicitly put on the table so that people can decide. And then finally, we did talk about, again, the tax credit issue for the facade. The general obligation bond, we want to be very serious about that, and we just, the whole table agreed that the more you can include that attracts the various interest groups in town, the more you have a chance of getting the taxpayers to agree with you. There was also some notion and questions about how much the school district itself could be approached for some capital contributions to things like the fields and so forth. But we would defer to those who are very knowledgeable about the school district and how it operates with its capital funds as to whether that's even feasible or not. But we would certainly want to suggest exploring that in a serious, systematic way. Table 5, is that it? Roughly? Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone.
Here's your notepad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yao. So next we're going to have Frank's group number 2. Yes, I'll move the easel.
Hi, we had a small but very lively group. I guess the first thing that I want to say is that there was nothing that the people in the group that was written in the principles that was objected to, that it was all okay. There was a tremendous amount of discussion. You'll see a tremendous amount of notes on refinement and expansion, but nothing was objected to as that it was written. Get rid of this. So I'm going to, as you can see, there's a lot of small points. I'm going to hit the major stuff. This will all be cataloged. And of course, if anybody from the group thinks I missed somebody, they should chime in. One thing in the first section where we have focus on performing arts, everybody in the group thought that there should be definitely attempted, I think it's the second bullet point, to make sure that their multi-purpose aspect remained in there, that there was somehow that was covered. There was a comment that there should be another guiding principle, that there should be public art. And also, I think this might have been somewhere else, that there should also be interior art, that what other private whatever was built here should also be encouraged to have art inside. But there should be definitely public art added into part of the purpose for the historic Civic Auditorium. Okay. Moving on to consider private land use. Okay, a big thing was nobody wants a massive thing here. That was a comment that, we actually had the word hotel does not come up in the principles, but we had a discussion about that anyway, and basically we were split. We were cumulatively ambivalent about it, you might say. There were pros and cons. One thing that came out of that was the sense that the principle should really emphasize the importance of great design, that great design can solve problems. That's one of the things it does. We should say we want great design. Split on the hotel issue. Oh, and then one small thing, the bullet point on that principle about the historic Belmar neighborhood, we felt should be switched to the section on open space. That was more likely to be part of the open space discussion. As for the flow, but the next page, again, use great design for this activation, the Activate Pico. We felt that the activity on the site would benefit the city, that the people in the group felt that all in all, connectivity is good, that this would be a positive for the city in terms of the connections. The bridge across 4th Street, this group felt that if it was not at a second level of a building, it would take up too much space in terms of the impact that it would have on the area, but that it could be looked at if it was coming from the second story. That actually came up later on. We felt that the bullet 2 on this page should emphasize Expo, the Expo station, the link to the Expo station, as well as links to downtown Santa Monica. Now I think it's bullet point 4 says transit as a general term, but we felt there should be specific mention of the Expo station. Okay, the open space. Bullet 1, everybody agreed to that. Bullet 2, yes, everybody agreed that the investigation should occur on the sports field, and there were certain people there who felt that the location to the high school makes it important, particularly important to look at that, but that they felt the investigation should be in the context with the citywide plans for recreation at parks, etc. Okay, on the last page, the generate of innovative financing proposals, etc. We looked at that in the context of the recommendations to City Council because we felt that a lot of those were applicable to this. One suggestion was to expand the subsidy catchment area. That this was a suggestion that if there's development on the other side of Pico or around here, that possibly that could be part of an assessment district that contributed to the financing of what goes here on the site. There was a strong agreement in favor of public-private partnerships, but an emphasis that could not mean that the city has to maintain agreements that ensure appropriate city oversight and control, that you couldn't privatize 100%, let's put it that way. Public-private meant just that. And that's it. Any thoughts from the people at the table? Okay.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Next, group number 3, Nina's group. And we'll cue up your flip chart here.
Hi, everybody. I had the best table, in case you were wondering. Basically, I'll try really hard not to repeat things that have already been said. Our group was in favor of a flexible use and keeping things going, which was already said, of creating that nexus between Barnum Hall and the Greek and what's going on across the street in terms of the cultural campus. Liked the idea of community uses and keeping things really vibrant around the Civic. There was talk in terms of mix of uses of adding arts components, understanding that an actual museum might not be a viable alternative, but certainly having gallery space just in the public spaces that are incidental to the building as they are, and really using them for arts uses and display, and in that way would be a really interesting thing. They wanted synergistic uses to be things that would activate the area during non-performance hours, have it be an all-day kind of a place where you could come and get something for breakfast and wander over to Tongava Park or whatever it is that you're going to do, but that it not just be centered around performance times. And have an indoor-outdoor focus, open up a wall, have a performance that sort of flows to the outside, or just outdoor performances that are connected to the programming within, and that sort of thing. And also the idea of having things for people of all ages in the community here. In terms of private land uses, they were really interested in the idea of a broader cultural district where we could get income from other projects and developments in the city that would help feed and support things that are built and uses that occur here at the Civic. We talked a lot about the scale of what private land uses might end up having if they were built here. People really liked the idea of food in general, Grand Central Market, places to snack and eat, and lunch and breakfast, and as well as dinner and things that you would eat on your way to the theater, but also things that you want to eat while you were waiting for your kid to finish their soccer game, assuming you're not busy cheering. They were very interested in the Belmar Triangle history recognition aspect. And then, again, the connection to the Samo High uses, and also just the physical connection, perhaps a bridge, perhaps a tunnel. Tunnels came up a lot in our group. Bridges, tunnels, connections, pathways, bicycle routes, especially to Expo. Again, that's an interesting repeat there. Partnerships with the library in terms of arts and cultural events and uses and goings on. And also we discussed the need for better signage and so forth. Right now, the signage and the frontage is sort of all focused on Main Street, and we felt there were other traffic areas to capitalize on in terms of signage and advertising for the site and what's going on here around the perimeter. Moving on to open spaces, we talked a lot about the appeal of having a big lawn that would be flexible for performance space and also for games and sports, and of course the water issues that come up with that, and gray water systems and that kind of thing that connects to all of our sustainable goals in the city, and funneling water off of other uses that are on the site or nearby so that we can get the grass that is so flexible for so many different uses. So that gets into the active program spaces and the size of the field, and there were lots of discussions about different ways the flexibility of the field could be capitalized on. In terms of a viable project, we were talking a lot about different kinds of uses if we were, for example, to seek a general obligation bond, of different things that we could add to kind of sweeten the pot. Nobody maybe wants to fund just a big old civic auditorium project, but maybe if it had something really new and exciting, a maker space that really capitalizes on the whole tech world that is here in Silicon Beach, that would get people excited and maybe even attract funding from some of those organizations and companies, and that would make a bond look better and bring in funding from those other sources. So it was really about defining the project a little more before checking bond feasibility, so that we really put things in there that people would really be excited about. And I guess that's all we did. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, Nina. Phil's group is next, which is group or table number 4. And report back. We want to emphasize anything new, or maybe emphasizing things that we've already captured. There you go.
Table 4, that's it.
Okay. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah. You just flip it for me. Sure. That way I don't have to bother. Okay, so table 4. We looked at, on the first guiding principle, full control of the site. People in Santa Monica have to buy in. Programming needed to be for residents first at reasonable prices. They were in favor of special events. They were in favor of this being a special place that was culturally interesting, that it needed to have respect residents, and included open space. We left empty space there. Now I feel bad. Okay, we felt that the connection to Santa Monica High School's cultural facilities was of vital importance, that the Greek Theater at Samo High and Barnum Hall at Samo High had to be connected to the Civic Auditorium so that this becomes a real cultural space, that the field space was vitally important as specified in the 2005 Civic Center Specific Plan, and I can tell you our group was very concerned about any private development taking over the public use of civic space. We agreed on some of the cultural uses in the points for number 4. We also said that space needed to be used efficiently, and that we believe that the open space for outdoor events, that the 2-acre field that was planned should also be for the high school during the day, nights and weekends used for the community, that it had to have a synergy with cultural arts. So it was important that there would be a cafe or a restaurant, especially on the corner of Ocean and Pico, that it be that the uses be civic oriented, that Main and Pico become a vibrant, exciting area that would be alive. That, however, everything that was done on this premises needed to be oriented toward the arts and cultural interest, and that included that the field space would also be oriented toward cultural uses on weekends and nights. That there needed to be distinctive pathways that connected Ocean Park to the Civic and then to the downtown area. That affordability was discussed over and over again. That small parks, in addition to the main field, that there be small patches of open space to gather, to sit, to reflect, to use. And that was a huge part of this as well. That that there was a discussion about the fact that restrooms and everything would have to be built on the outside of the current Civic to satisfy ADA standards. There was a discussion about the earthquake renovation of the shell and whether the current shell, the current exterior of the house, was vitally important or just the facade, lobby, etc. And I think our group was more apt to say that the important parts of the Civic were the atrium, were the outside shell, but it might be more cost efficient to look at this area and rebuild the parts that would have extensive earthquake renovation. We are very concerned that a lot of the events be community-oriented, Santa Monica-oriented events for residents and visitors, that this not become just a regional draw and attract more traffic to the area, but really be something that our residents would use as well. I think a concern was that we had too many activities that were for the region, and we needed to also focus on the 93,000 people who live here. That occasionally national events that it not be taken over by private development, that the events, yes, arts and cultural related events would be good, that we were not in favor of retail unless it was arts and cultural uses. And again, I can emphasize over and over again, local priority and open space were a priority for this group. Again, number 4, the cultural aspects, a gathering space. It was discussed that the playing field could also be used for art fairs, for street fairs, that could be used as an outdoor concert arena at night. That it needed to be everything from food festivals to art fairs. So the playing field would not just be a playing field, it would also be used for community programming as well. We disagreed with page 3. We disagreed a lot on the financial uses of the facility. And the last page, sorry. We disagreed with, Lenore? Okay, we disagreed with utilizing private financing and private land use on public property. There was a huge discussion in our group about the fact that this is a civic land, and that means community uses. So our group, I think, disagreed with, other than a restaurant, giving away or allowing private uses on this land. So they wanted to make sure this is used for the community. It's not a hotel site. It's not an office building site. And it was believed that the city acts as a developer too much right now, that private land is not synergistic with public property, that we need to have public control of this land, and that we couldn't give that away to private developers. We needed to commemorate the Belmar Triangle. And again, I'm going to, as this actually used a couple of times, that we're going to use public funds for public lands. That we want inviting landscaping, we want inviting sidewalks on the exterior with trails and pathways through the interior of the property. That the connections to the high school were of vital importance. The Greek Theater's 3,500-seat outdoor stadium across the way needed to be combined with this, and coordination with the Barnum Hall, coordination with the school district and the city on redevelopment of this land was crucial. Again, and we're repeating some of this, but an outdoor art festival, arts and crafts, variety of park space in the open space. In addition to the main athletic field, there needed to be small gathering places. The 2-acre multi-use field was appropriate, but it also, again, athletic and art performances, night use, special events, outdoor movies, food festivals, options for mobile food, food carts, encourage positive activity on the entire grounds has a way of unifying both the north side of the city with the south side. And in public funding, We believe that an independent commission or body needed to have the public oversight and control. An enterprise fund might be one way of operating this. Funding that's supported by the community, transit occupancy tax, civic land, again, emphasizes public use, culturally focused. Open space trumps offices and hotels on the space. Bond issues were important. Special district, special entertainment funding district. Philanthropic funds were a good idea. Funds outside the general fund, but this, again, emphasized this is a civic center. Entertainment district, special funding, keep iconic elements of the center, rebuild the remainder, a new civic structure, and support a parking study. The question was 3 stories of underground parking necessary at this site? And that was a question, because that's a significant amount of the funding. So I think that was a big question as well, is do a parking study. Do we need 2,900 or 2,700 parking spaces underground here? And if we don't, that will help reduce the overall cost of a potential bond, as well as looking at the shell and rebuilding to modern specifications, which would also reduce the cost as well. Did I leave anything out? And we want the entertainment to also have oversight by the city. So even if a private entity helped manage it, it had to be something that overall a city-funded commission would be in charge of overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have group number 1, which is Linda. Linda's group. And just want to reemphasize that there's a lot of similar ideas. So we're taking the top 1 or 2 ideas for each of the categories. And if something has already been repeated, we want to see new comments, new information. And if you can just summarize to 1 or 2 points for each.
I'm not going to go in order because I think it's important to focus first on things that we completely agreed on. And one of them was no soccer field. There was a feeling on the group, very strong, that it takes away from the other opportunities on the site, that there are better places for it, that it produces no revenue, and that there should be limited open space on the site. The second place, yes, I hear that over there. The second place, I think we disagree with a number of the other tables, is on number 4 with general connectivity creating a flow. There was a strong feeling on the committee, pretty much unanimous, that no funds should be spent on any of these guiding principles, that there was a feeling they were programmatic, that they would come out of the process naturally and they would resolve themselves. The second place I think we possibly disagree with other people was that on the Belmar Triangle, that we should not be focusing only on that issue, that the issue of communities in the city is a much greater one than just the community that was in the Belmar Triangle, and that if we're going to do anything, it should be focused on a larger examination of those communities, and that there was a feeling that this probably was not the site for a museum. The disagreements that we had centered around the fact that there were 2 strong feelings on our group. One was that the rehabilitation of the Civic Center is the most important thing, and that's all that there should be a focus on, period. That's it. The sort of other part of that was, all right, we have to pay for it, so we will look at other uses. There was a tolerance for restaurants and other revenue-producing uses on the site, but again, the feeling was, do they contribute financially to helping rehab the Civic, and are they completely self-sustaining? Sort of the counter argument was was the realization that those uses can make for one-stop shopping, i.e. someone comes for a cultural event or for some kind of presentation at the auditorium, and they also come for dinner, and so they don't have to go and park downtown or on Main Street and then come back and park here. They could park here and also have dinner. So there was a real disagreement there with how much, again, private uses do you have on the site. There was a hope, a goal, that any of those uses, again, would be self-sustaining and they would be utilized, funding from that would be utilized to rehab the Civic. One of the sort of side issues to that was looking very seriously at the costs of rehabbing the Civic. Do we need the gold-plated project? Do we really need underground parking? Do we need a full-scale rehab? Is there a way to make it less expensive? And along with that, can we build into those contracts incentives like with respect to when they rebuilt the freeway, how quickly it was done, and it was done on budget? Can we make sure that that is the situation? Because as you all know, with construction projects, budgets balloon completely, and we should have some kind of a deal that gets it done quickly and that penalizes the builder if it's not done on time. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Linda. Next group is group number 7, Philip. And again, want to emphasize any new points and top level 1 or 2 points for each of the breakout groups. For your group?
Yeah, the soccer fields, we agreed that we didn't want a big fenced-in soccer field that stripped it away from the rest of the site. We all agreed on that. We did not say that we didn't want much open space. We all agreed that.
No, I said we only wanted limited open space.
I don't know that that was what the point was. But the soccer field is the walled off.
Thank you. Okay, Philip.
Great. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure of going fifth, as a lot of these subjects have already been hit once, so I'm going to try and just keep it brief to a couple of new ones from our table. We had actually a great table here at 7. It was a very thoughtful conversation that kept going, no matter which the number was, back to the economic relationship of the site. So you'll see kind of a theme here. So I'm going to try and hit 1 or 2 points. On the rehab, one of the things we brought up was to use some forward-thinking ideas like crowdfunding to come up with some of the capital that's going to be necessary to do the project. So I think crowdfunding is something that we haven't really spoken about in the past. We may not understand the limits or the capacity of something like crowdfunding, and so I think it's something that our table thought was important to get a little bit forward-thinking and to go down that direction. The second one, which was similar to Phil's table, there was a conversation about the balance of the scope of the rehab project relative to how much of the building is architecturally significant relative to the seismic retrofit and the other costs of the rehab. I think it came up on a couple of tables just as far as what the scope of the redevelopment is relative to the historic building that everyone's very sensitive about. Our table had a lot of nostalgia about the concerts that they had all been to in years past, so everyone kind of shares that same emotional attachment to the building, and now they were trying to put it through an economic filter as well to make sure everyone got what they wanted. I'm kind of jumping around. On the second one, our group was pretty committed to the idea that this could be a really thriving sports complex in its entirety, and I think that's open for interpretation. Our specific group thought that something, and actually Steve did an amazing rendering of it that he'll show you on his iPad at the end of this, of essentially a multi-ice rinks, subterranean ice rink complex that then had a sports field on top. It essentially took up most of the site, so it'd have to have parking underneath it, but it was the first time I'd ever seen someone take the time to actually render what it might look like. It's obviously doesn't fit in a huge revenue-generating campaign like a 20-story hotel would, but the idea was that the more important part of this whole program was to make sure
that the open space and the athletic fields were the primary reason for the project here, and that we weren't going to lose those aspects of the project just to renovate this building. So I think there was an overarching concept of, could we make them exclusive projects from each other and make sure that the open fields became a priority, and then that the Civic was viewed separately. Number 3, on the private land, the big comment that came up that was new was a more of a health-oriented environment for the private land. So whatever it was, that's where the sports complex idea was connected to it, whereas instead of something that was more about restaurants or hotels, maybe it could be something that was more about fitness and outdoor activities. The second one was a pretty strong opinion that there were no hotels would be, I think, would benefit the site as far as the Ocean Park neighborhood. I think that's come up on several other tables, just that shouldn't be considered. On the next one, on the flow, which also relates to the ice rink concept, is that the ice rinks are things that would go late night and early morning, and so the idea for the flow would be something that was very round-the-clock uses, something that the community could use all throughout the day and night. Make sure that we had bike access through the site to connect to the other bike lanes around the city that are multiplying right now, and to make sure that to make greenery one of the key features of the site, to make sure there was more trees, that as you walked around the neighborhood here, you didn't feel like you were just walking over an asphalt lot, that you actually felt like you were in the flow of a functional green system. And then the last one was to be careful not to make the site turn in on itself, so it's not visible as you walk through, so that it's more open to the surrounding communities and has that flow versus the flow of insulating itself from its surroundings. Number 5, on open space, like I said, the same point, that the park should not, that whatever the open space is, it should not specifically support the Civic, that you should peel those two ideas apart, and that the ice rink would be, and the ice rink and the sports fields would be considered open space, and it doesn't just have to be parks and benches, that it could be something that's active for people to use. And the last one, which we spent a lot of time talking about, was the financial angles. They wanted to make sure that we definitely went out to the entertainment companies to make sure that we could raise money in different ways from a group of people. I think the conclusion was there was not going to be one silver bullet to fix the problem, and they wanted to make sure that the council and the city went to various groups that might have interest, including naming rights. And then again, back to the original point, bringing down the overall cost of the entire project by considering the appropriate scope of renovation versus the cost of doing something brand new that gets you to the same place for cheaper. So that was our group, and thank you guys.
So next we have Jody, and that was, I think, group number 6. And again, we're trying to move as quickly as possible in getting all your comments down. So we're looking for any new ideas or the top 1 or 2 areas for each of the sections. So Jody.
Hi. We're actually pretty quick. We had a very sophisticated table of people who are involved in the community, and they had some very good ideas. By and large, we were in agreement with most of the guiding principles. The one that was a real standout for us, which was number 3, where a lot of people at our table wanted no private plan use, and that they were pretty strong on that. Other than that, on section 1 for preservation and rehabilitation, we wanted to make sure that exhibition and meeting space was available, as well as convention opportunities. As far as the cultural and community hub, we wanted modest restaurant development of cafes and restaurants and stores. Regarding the flow between, on number 3 again, no private land use at all. Number 4, the flow between the Civic and the community. Again, make sure that the corner of Pico and Main is activated like everybody else. And we wanted clarification on the strategy for the traffic flow around the Civic Center campus, including egress and ingress from the parking for the 2,400 spots that are going to be put in there. Regarding the open space, we wanted to maximize the open space and make it flexible, multi-purpose, and for community use. And regarding innovative and financially sustainable proposals, we wanted to charge Santa Monica College market rate for the lease on the ECEC, and put the revenues towards the renovation of the Civic. And we wanted the direct revenue from the surface parking to go towards the renovation as well, and that should be done immediately. And we wanted to put the bond measure up for vote. And that's pretty much where we were. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have group number 10. Jason? Oh.
In the mention of cafe and restaurant, nobody said anything about a store. This group did not endorse any kind of store.
Yes, we endorse no retail. Again, no private use of space.
Okay. Okay.
They don't want development on the site. That's all.
Okay. So next we have Jason, group number 10. Any new comments?
Okay, Jason Harris, and I had a very informed group as well. I'll just kind of highlight some items of emphasis from our group, and then I'll just quickly review our notes as well. Our group really wanted to maintain the site for community meeting place and community events. That was a very important feature of the reuse of this building and overall site. A sports field, echoing some of the comments we heard, being emphasized to double as a multi-purpose space was emphasized in our group, and then leveraging and coordinating special events with Samo High in relation to cultural and other activities. Of the various points, I'll just do a quick review. In the Civic Cultural Campus, being a vibrant cultural hub was emphasized and consistent to what we heard as well. And really, I think an emphasis that you'll see throughout, that the commercial activity that occurs, one, that it be limited, and two, that it not compete and detract from the open space from a land use commitment standpoint. So kind of jumping ahead, the other points that commercial uses be focused towards the peripheral of the streets was a new component. You had a shout out on our team that the Belmar Triangle community was an important element to incorporate for emphasis purposes. Active programming of interior spaces was critical. That public programming, being consistent to this being a community space, was very important, and you'll hear and see throughout that subsidization or amount of community events be dedicated on the site was critical. Just finer points in regards to the open space about how the sport field could be used for multi-purpose, be it being used for turf. Continued statements of affordability of community events being for all. Advertising and actively programming of events was a highlight. A lot of frustration about the ECEC in our group, how it wasn't really incorporated in the early visioning through this process, and that it really needs to integrate into the site, and an emphasis that it should go back to the 2005 dimensions. When we kind of get to the end of financial viability, there was just a broad concern about sponsorship and naming rights, how much would ultimately be supported by the community. That was raised in broad question. And then just lastly, in other comments, that there was a statement that the Civic Working Group, that be maintained and be used as an oversight body throughout planning and implementation was emphasized. And if we can maybe see if there's one last comment at the end. And then just lastly, maximize and prioritize public community access to every square inch of the site. So if you heard my statements throughout, a common theme through my group. So with that.
Okay, group number 9. And again, new comments or 1 or 2 points on each.
I will try to do just that. We had a very rousing discussion, and some things we agreed with and disagreed with each other, and there are a few things sort of went in a couple of different places. So I'm just going to try to hit the points. I'm not as organized as probably as I could be. Sort of keeping the initial intention of the Civic Auditorium, that it really be for performances, and that we really retain the architectural integrity, those things. keep going, and I'm going to hit that point in a minute. That we really figure out how to use the back wall of the space for a little bit, maybe artistic projection or some other cultural purpose. And keep going. I'm trying to make sure I'm just hitting the big ones that we had, that possibly having a small outdoor performance space, band shell outside, really leveraging and connecting that. A bridge was mentioned many times, connecting it to the campus across the street. Turn the page. Making sure that we incorporate nonprofits and school and cultural uses into the use of the auditorium and to the space, with a no charge, potentially no fee. There was a question of how much parking do we need, and that a study really needs to be made to see exactly what is going to be needed, and that all the land leases be really clear what those leases are for. We were split on the childcare in our group. Some people were for, some people not so much. Just a concern around parking and what we're doing here, creating more traffic and making sure that we are being really conscious of encouraging people to find other means and ways to get here, including making sure that the space is open and moves for walking. We love restaurants, everybody's got to eat, but really while we do the traffic study, while we do the EIR, the CEQA, to sort of study, but really take a serious look at what the traffic impacts and the social impacts of what we put here and how that impacts the larger neighborhood and community. There was a question as far as the making sure that, like I said, the parking, okay, good, multi-use, open space. On the open space in the field, we were definitely split. Some folks were more inclined for a full field, athletic field, others not as much. One of the things was really finding ways to make it more multi-use, so it wasn't just used as a sports field, and it's not just blocked off as that. No understanding how much it would take, really looking at how that would sort of happen, making sure that it is prioritized for school district use and then for the general public afterwards. Just the social need and importance of open space. So not just for the field, but we have other open space available. Ready? There was a question about, with the financial sustainability, making sure that we reinstate the Civic Center Fund and that all parking revenue go back into the operating cost. Also, any lease revenue goes into the operating cost and doesn't just simply go to the general fund. The things that are created here, those funds actually stay here. There was a suggestion that maybe we cut city admin salaries as a contribution to making this happen. There was a large discussion about the GAN limit funds and where the city could be using those funds. I didn't know about the GAN limits, and I found those interesting, but as sort of what that is and where that gives us any possibility of access to funds that we're not currently including in our scope. Part of this was really a question of, is it necessary that this space be financially self-sufficient? That if we put in there the rule that basically says it's got to make all of its capital and operating funds and cover all those costs, then that reduces the community use and forces it into more private use, and our group was not as supportive of that. And so the question is, what can be paid for through city funds, other funding, and not simply push this all the way into it, making it be self-sufficient? And for the public good, and really looking at all of the possible tools and funding that we could get to pay for that. And that was our last page. Anything that I left out or we need to put? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie. And let's thank our facilitators and note takers. And thank you all for all your comments. Turn it over back to the working group.
So if you're a working group member, why don't you come on back up to the dais? If somebody would like to make public comment, please bring your speaker card up to this table. They're putting them in order of receipt. And then we'll start the public comment in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Also, let's keep the public comment to to this side. And if you're the next 3 people, Nina will call you up and you can hang out over by the refreshments. That way our videographer doesn't actually have to toggle from podium to podium.
And while everyone is convening, I want you all to know that we found somebody's parking ticket, so if someone is planning to go home later today, you might need this. Okay.
We're not going to have a 20-story.
We'll just let her do
We want to
that.
know what's going on. So, I mean, it's not...
I could just start. Oh, did they? Hello? No, this one's on. This one's on. Yeah. While everyone is finalizing, filling out a speaker's chit and so forth, why don't I take 1 minute before we open the public comment to go over the next steps in this process through the summer so that you'll have a timeline. Following this workshop, the CWG will discuss all of the input we've received today and will proceed to organize and integrate this input with all the other input we received from the first 2 public workshops, all of our regular monthly meetings, all of the written comments that have been received, hard copy or email, and all of the technical reports that the staff and consultants have been providing to us over the last 18 months. We're going to be discussing those, discussing the principles and so forth, and working to integrate all of this material into our final report to council. We will have at least two more regular monthly public meetings. So just to remind you of the dates, the July meeting will be Wednesday, July 15th. That's the week before our normal Monday meeting, but we had some vacation schedules to accommodate. And then the August meeting will be back at the regular date. That's Monday, August 24th. Both of those meetings will begin at the regular time, 6:30, and will be in this room, 6:30 at night in this room. So the remaining milestones for the CWG are, for the rest of this month in July, we'll be receiving and discussing and reviewing all of this input and working it into a preliminary draft report. During the month of August, we hope to refine that report into a final written report. If we can do that, then in September, a staff report will be prepared. And then we are tentatively scheduled to present the findings to the City Council at their meeting on Tuesday, October 13th. So, well, you know that City Council agendas can roll back and forth, so we'll just have to keep on top of whether we stick on October 13th. But for now, that's the schedule when we'll be providing the final report. So now, public comment.
All right. Let's jump right in. Steve Weinberg. And by the way, forgive me if I can't pronounce your name or read your handwriting. I do my best. So that's Steve Weinberg, Daryl Evans, and Jerry Rubin. Please get ready in order. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm here representing the Bring Back the Ice Committee. I was here a few times ago, and we spoke to you about the possibility of bringing a world-class ice skating rink complex here in conjunction with the Los Angeles Kings, and I think it would be an amazing thing for the city. We also had been talking to the AYSO and the soccer people, and together we decided that it would be very amazing if we could do a soccer field on the roof. And if anyone wants to see the rendering that we did that was mentioned by Philip, I do have that at my table. It's on a very small iPad right here. But if you're more than welcome to come see it. It will incorporate a soccer field above and the ring complex below, bringing a tremendous amount of revenue, I think, to the city here, adding to the cultural activities, bringing almost round-the-clock activity and revenue for the city, right in the heart here. I'm going to cede the rest of my time to Daryl Evans, if that's okay.
Can you send that to civic@smgov.org? Take a screenshot and send it to civic@smgov.org.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Posted in the Save the Civic Field Facebook
page right now.
Okay.
But not to say they couldn't do this, but still did, yeah.
Daryl Evans, then Jerry Rubin, and Mitchell Jackman.
Okay, thank you again. Welcome to everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk about what AEG and Los Angeles Kings kind of have a vision for here in Santa Monica, and that would be to utilize some of the space for an ice arena, and more importantly, probably a recreation center, not just focusing in on the game of hockey, but figure skating and also a lot of other physical activity for the community here. I think the residents could make great use of this space. I think when we take a look at it, anybody that has visited the facility that the Kings train at now in El Segundo, they'll recognize it not necessarily as a hockey rink or all Kings identified. When you come in there through the course of the day, you'll see all the families in the community come together, and it's just an extension of their homes. And that's what we envision here in Santa Monica. We have a number of people that drive from this area that have a long commute to have to go, whether it be to go ice skating, play the game of hockey, or any other activity that you could do in an ice facility. There's a lot of uses of the space that you can make, right from daycare. You can put in a public gym. We've had weddings, bar mitzvahs, black tie affairs, lacrosse, basketball games. With the surface not only being ice, you put a cover over that and make multiple use of it. So, again, putting emphasis on how valuable it could be to the community. Just telling you a little bit about what's happening right now with the Kings. We're in a great spot right now, and we really envision a lot of good things happening in our game and the use of an ice rink. A couple of things. Just a few weeks ago, the Kings, Los Angeles Kings, were named the Sports Business Franchise. They were awarded the top award for all professional sports across the nation, and we take great pride in that. So I think you're looking at a model franchise here that is looking to get on board to grow this wonderful game. And I know, again, it's an ice rink, and we're not necessarily just focusing on the game of hockey here, but in doing so, our minor league affiliate right now, the Manchester Monarchs, tonight could become the Calder Cup champions of the American Hockey League. And what kind of drives that conversation moving forward is the American Hockey League is moving 5 teams here to Southern California next year. So the growth of our game is moving in a very positive direction right now. Now, taking that to the next extension, where I feel is probably even more important, and we don't have the voice of our kids here right now or the future, but we're looking to take this right down to the grassroots. And in our game right now, we have what we call a little program called Little Kings. We currently have 1,020 kids signed up. That's new kids, boys and girls that are going to play hockey in the upcoming fall. And we've got a list of 500 on the waiting list already. We're also going to develop our first high school hockey league, which is going to begin this fall as well, with teams like Santa Monica and that. So this would be right here in the backyard. So this really extends out to the community, and it also creates a lot of jobs. The kids that currently work in our ice rink are kids from the neighborhood, kids that are going. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, it doesn't quite work that way, but...
There's no overtime in
Jerry
this?
Rubin,
just 3 periods?
no.
Okay. All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have Jerry Rubin, Mitchell Jackman, and Jerry Rosenblum. All right, then Mitchell Jackman. Jerry, any takers for Mitchell Jackman? Oh, here he comes. All those years. I didn't know your last name.
Environmental, we all talk about it, but we don't like to do anything about it with the congestion and the global warming. This is going to be a magnet for a lot of cars. We have the train coming. which is allegedly Santa Monica got behind it because it was going to eliminate congestion. Ha ha. So we have buses all around, and we have the bicycles, and that should be the way to go, because I don't want to any further go with cars coming into the area. That's my thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Rosenblum, Mario Fonda Bernardi, Elizabeth Vandenberg.
No Jerry Rosenblum.
Nope, Mario. Elizabeth Vandenberg and Ellen Hannon.
I'd like to focus on one part of your charge as a committee, which is to build consensus. It's a small word, but it's a key word in all those other things you're supposed to do. And as far as I can tell, unless there is consensus, there's not going to be a viable general obligation bond. It's just not going to happen. And the way you get consensus, you put everything in that people need. And one thing we've heard over and over again is that we do definitely need a multipurpose sports field. And without a multipurpose sports field, I believe that this whole plan is a non-starter. And not only is it a non-starter, but it will have wasted all hundreds of your hours that you've been kind enough to volunteer, thousands of community hours, $400,000 of consultant fees will just go up in smoke because you have a project that you can't fund and doesn't have community support from everybody who could support it. So I would encourage you to make as part of the program you recommend to the City Council the inclusion of a multipurpose sports field, not as an option if some developer would be kind enough to possibly insert it into the program, but make it as a key part of the program, the same way as preserving the auditorium is a key part of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, Ellen Hannon, jazz applause, please. Ellen Hannon and Mike Feinstein.
Okay. I'm going to pull this out. Sorry. Thanks. Thank you, Civic Working Group, for the opportunity to have public testimony. I would like to prioritize the working principles that we saw today, with really the primary goal being that we just focus on the rehab of the Civic Auditorium. I believe a lot of the other discussions that we're having are things that we can and could and maybe should work on, but I believe that we really should focus on the rehab of the Civic, and that should be our primary goal. Secondary goals would include public open spaces. I think we don't have enough, and I think we need more. The third thing I would say is private uses. We could utilize retail dining and small workspaces. I do not recommend a hotel. We've got quite a few coming up in the city, and we don't need those. But those could be used to offset some of the costs we see. I would say the key flow between Civic and the surrounding community should really focus on simple, low-cost infrastructure. I do not believe in the bridge. I do not believe in fancy infrastructure to do this. If our focus is on the Civic Auditorium rehab, we should focus on that. I do support the idea of programmatic focuses of bringing those cultural centers together, so I'd like to see that happen. I would eliminate the vibrant cultural and community hub around the Civic Auditorium. It's going to make me sound like a Luddite, but basically I believe that will help us reduce costs and focus us on the main priority, which is the rehab of the Civic, and that we can work on those as they become feasible and possible. I finally say let the experts work on the financial. I find it very interesting that we're being asked to determine things like this. I never thought about the ITC, the investment tax credit. There's a lot of good ideas, crowdsourcing. I don't think that we've really put the best brains on there. I mean, I think we could put people who have a more focus if they know what our vision is. So I would support that we would ask the experts to focus on that, eliminate that as part of our possibility of those working principles to support goals in 1 and 2. I also have read from the City Council's staff report that we are committing $5.5 million from the general fund to build the ECEC that we see on this site. That was a decision by the city council, by whoever's in charge to not put it into the Civic, and I find that not a good prioritization. So with that, I'd also second, I think, some opinions. We're only paying the Santa Monica Community College $1 for them to lease the ECEC on this property. I find that unacceptable. We are third parties between the city, the school, the community college, and we should be supporting those monetarily as we see fit. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jazz applause, please. Ellen Hannon, Mike Feinstein. I guess you're up, Mike. And then Bob Taylor and Lenore Morrell.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be Ellen Hannon. So first, I just want to thank all of you guys for spending so much volunteer time. This is one of the more challenging, let's all give them a hand. This is one of the more challenging community processes, and it's great. Thank you. Thank you for putting your time. And second, I also want to give staff some credit here that I think we've been treated like adults through this, that we've been given a chance to explore trade-offs. People like to say to staff that you just have a pre-agenda already up in your mind. I don't think that's the case, and I think the models that Paul has worked on as well, and the fact that we've had all these meetings, and we think about all that service, all the problems around the world, the communities that don't have any opportunities, and how pampered we are with being able to have all these community meetings where we can just show up, we've got a breakfast, and we have all these trade-offs here for us. It's really a blessing, and this is, I think, one of the reasons that Rick Cole came to the city, because we get to be able to operate on this sort of level. I at least want to give staff a thank you as well. I really think this has been good for us. So just two points. One, since your first meeting that you guys had, I came and argued for the hotel at Main Street in Pico, and the ARB made a mistake many years ago by allowing the tenant at that time to put those ugly metal blocks in front of their windows, the bars, metal plating is the right word, so that the people who were working there wouldn't be seen by pedestrians who walk by. That was before we were really a pedestrian-friendly city and thought about that. That doesn't fit. And if we can find a way, ask San Diego how we figure out how to convince them to go into a DA and put a hotel there, so however it has to happen, that can provide, I believe, a good chunk of the operating expenses for the project. And I favor going to the residents for the capital costs and not developing 4th and Pico much other than some complementary cultural uses, but not a lot of commercial stuff. And I think if we do the capital with the residents and the operating costs with the hotel, that can work. And in terms of the residents being willing to do the capital, if we do, as somebody else mentioned before, if we do combine the cultural, artistic, and open space communities in a bond measure, I think people are going to support it. And given the current mindset about concerns about overdevelopment, if a bond measure is seen as a source of preventing overdevelopment by residents paying up front and essentially buying the right to keep 4th and Pico open, I think that really works. I was one of the folks who called Frank Schwengel many years ago when we thought we were going to have the field, and then the community process started going the other way so that we weren't going to have the field, and he turned people out back in, I don't know what year that was, to make sure that...
2002.
What, 2002 was it? But given that... And
I
now
think that's your time.
Oh, we only got 2 minutes. Okay, ice rink should be under the opportunity site at Ocean Park in Lincoln. Council was stupid for giving that up. That's where the ice rink belongs, under that parking lot.
Bob
Thank
Taylor,
you.
please.
Bob Taylor, please?
He's next.
Oh, I thought you were supposed to be Bob Taylor.
I think there's only one. Is he still here? I don't see him.
He just left.
Oh, God. Lenore Morrell, and then Charles Andrews. And after him, Matthew Goldfarb. No, Lenore. Oh, there you are.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. I attended the very first meeting of this group. It was even a larger group, I think, than was assembled here. I'm sorry. My voice is off, too. I attended the very first meeting of this committee, working group, and was, and in fact, reported for our table, which had about a dozen or more people at it. And the principles that were generally agreed on quite enthusiastically at that meeting are really well represented in these colored sheets that you have here. However, I was shocked when I saw for the second meeting that the whole enterprise had changed from envisaging what people wanted on this site to how to finance. And a whole new agenda about office space trade-offs and hotel space trade-offs came up. I want to say clearly, I don't think this should have ever been put to an untrained public to try to decide. I think the committee would have been better served by hiring some people who are really well trained in financial matters and who could come up with a report with some alternatives and trade-offs in it. I felt that the whole, almost like the enterprise had been hijacked. Suddenly, citizens were being asked to be financial experts about how to pay for something that they haven't even decided on. So I do want to say that I was impressed today by how much consensus there was about focusing on community access and use and desires for the space, on the general agreement on using an open space concept that would have multi-purpose for community events of all sorts, including those linked to what was presumably the initial primary purpose of our discussions here, which was the community's desire for an iconic, innovative, state-of-the-art professional performing arts venue anchoring a cultural campus. I mean, that sounds lovely. I hope we don't ever lose that idea as to why we're here. And I just one final comment, because that seems to be a lost cause at this moment, but I'm not ready to totally write it off. I am concerned about the ECEC, the Early Childhood Center, which the council just recently decided to increase in height from 25 to 40 feet and admit 10 more students, and therefore, and the funding and so on. This is essentially given for $1 a year to Santa Monica Community College, which is not a local school. It's a state-supported school. And I don't see how that can be at all integrated. You know, the commission or the working group here has talked about synergistic uses. I'm all for childhood education and early. I have 4 children. I have many grandchildren. It's a great idea. Why here as part of a cultural campus? They have to be segregated off for their own
Thank
safety.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charles Andrews, Matthew Goldfarb, Marcia Stein.
Hi, Charles Andrews, resident of Ocean Park for 29 years. I would also like to thank the Santa Monica Civic Working Group for the hundreds and hundreds of hours that you guys have put in over 18 months, at great sacrifice and no enrichment for yourselves. So we all really appreciate that. I would also like to give appreciation to everybody who has shown up from the community for the 4 different days of workshops that we've had. I mean, this is not the way most people would choose to spend a Saturday morning, and yet everybody who has shown up here, I think, has felt like it was important to participate in this very crucial endeavor to the future of our city. There's so many things to comment on. I do want to say I wish in the presentations of all the tables that had been given that several groups hadn't opted to only tell us the different things that they came up with, because that did not allow us to really get a sense of what the entire room was interested in. Even though it would have taken longer, I personally would have wanted to know what each and every table came up with. And the other thing I'd like to say is somebody who's been very interested in language all his life since he was a kid, I would just caution everybody on the group and everyone involved in any civic endeavors to pay a lot of attention to language and things that are presented. And I'm going to use as a couple of examples the statistics from the second workshop that are online. I'm looking at some of them right now, and this one was presented during the consultant's presentation today. There's a chart under open space preferences, and there's a very tall line that represents field. It says 65 participants chose a field and balanced the capital budget. Many used a hotel and or ticket tax. It might be kind of interesting to note that 84% of those who chose Civic 1 chose the ticket tax. But why is that singled out? And why is the fact that 64% chose a hotel? Why that statistic? What's the third choice? Maybe there was a choice that was higher than that. Why was that put in there? That influences things, and we were, again, fed that biased statistic this morning. On another page about the field, it states that 836 respondents out of 1,698 chose the sports field option after an organized campaign, many of whom did not balance the capital budget. If that's not a prejudicial statement, if that's not making a judgment based on statistics that is inappropriate to the work of this committee and to the knowledge of the community, then I don't know what I'm talking about, because that sounds pretty prejudicial to me, and I didn't see that in other parts of the report. So, language counts.
Thank you very much. Matthew Goldfarb, Marcia Stein, and Alex Novakovich. Matthew Goldfarb, are you here? Marcia Stein, are you here? So then Alex and then James Sharmat.
Hi, I was very excited at the thought of redeveloping this empty big piece of land. And I thought, what a great opportunity to have on the west side a large venue for concerts, for ballet, for opera, to not have to schlep downtown to have cultural events. I don't know any other space in this whole west side area that is amenable to this. So if it were a sports venue for an ice, I know like the Forum, they have concerts there, but they convert it for ice hockey, and I don't know how all that would work, but I also am very practical, and I think all the wonderful renovations you want to do on this building and social services in Santa Monica, we have a lot of need to be able to finance all of this without worrying about bond issues and philanthropy. It would take a whole load off the city, and how many thousands of residents would be able to use this if we could come to a concert here? You could use the facilities. If you're going to build something like that and multi-level, you could create levels for your community arts projects and everything else that you might want to put on there. And if they can figure out how to put a soccer field on top of it, that's great too. But I think the parking for this, if you have multi-level parking, I was astonished to learn when they okayed the metro, they didn't provide any additional parking. So at 7 a.m., everyone going downtown will fill up all the parking spaces in Santa Monica. So if you could have parking with a shuttle service to the trains from here, people coming to a concert, we wouldn't have to invite a lot of extra traffic if people could take a train here and not have to worry about parking. And if you had some restaurants, people could come early for the concert, eat here, and one-stop shopping, as they said. And it would alleviate some of the traffic into downtown Santa Monica if I live just down the street from here, if I could come here for a restaurant, I wouldn't have to schlep into downtown. It would alleviate that traffic, which would be a benefit. And I don't see how renovating and treasuring the Civic Auditorium, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive with having the rest of this space used creatively to house programs for the arts and revenues and concerts, and it would pay for itself. And I think anything that can pay for itself can't be a bad thing. So that's my feeling.
Thank you. Alex Novakovich, James Sharma, and Thanawala.
Hi, I'm Alex Novakovich. I'm the executive director of the Santa Monica Symphony. And I'm here to speak for the symphony in saying that pie in the sky, we'd love you to build a symphonic concert hall for us. But we know that's not going to happen. So that when the Civic is renovated, please, of utmost importance is to make it acoustically sound for acoustic sound, not just amplified sound, so that the symphony can once again have a home. Right now we're in Barnum Hall, which is acoustically fabulous, but it is half the size of the Civic. And even though we all know where Barnum is, for most people it's very difficult to find. We've lost half of our audience because we're at Barnum. And I've seen too many handicapped people try to make the walk from our public parking structure up the hill to Barnum, and it's not a pretty sight. There's not enough parking at Barnum. And if you do try and integrate the Greek Theater and Barnum with the civic site, please keep in mind, what do we do with handicapped people? How do we provide parking and access for handicapped people to come to the Santa Monica Civic? And how are we going to get them over to the Greek? And if we can't get them over to the Greek, then please consider constructing a band shell so that in this beautiful open space that we're going to have in our newly renovated Civic, we can have musical groups perform that are not amplified, that are acoustic, and that there's a band shell that is protecting performance groups from this beautiful ocean breeze we have that tends to blow the sound away. So please give us a band shell so that we can perform both inside and outside. We are the Santa Monica Symphony. We are your symphony. It's our symphony.
Thank you. James Sharma, Ann Thanawala, Bruce Cameron.
Hi, my name is James Sharmat. I'm a resident. Excellent experience. Thank you very much. I did the first exercise and I did my favorite things. I came in for the second one. I would be bankrupt before I walked out the door. So I went through the second part of the exercise and I focused on operating costs because I didn't want to hand the bill over to future taxpayers who would just pave it all over. It's got to be either self-sustaining or the mechanisms have to be in there so it retains whatever it is we decide to do with it. I'm the investment tax credit guy. I want to be able to, I came up $16 to $20 million short on my capital costs. I was trying to figure out how to work primarily with the auditorium because that was our main priority. $16 to $20 million I felt I could do with the ITC on the facade. A lot of work needs to be done on this building, and there's an argument that it should be demolished, and that would be cheaper than anything you could renovate. The field. I did not include the field. It was validly brought up at my table that if you want a general obligation bond, you're going to have a field. I said, let's get the Santa Monica School District involved so that they can get some skin into the action so that parents and that part of the voting populace can get on board with the general obligation bond. And listening to people, I do believe there should be a hotel. I believe we should transplant the Georgian right onto the property. The southwest corner of Pico and Maine, it was mentioned in our circle that you could get some innovative retail locations right on Pico that would offset the dome of the auditorium because that's part of the architectural pleasure of the place. I do believe a public-private aspect of this is essential to get it going. I don't think you're going to get the voting populace together to keep this thing going on an ongoing basis, and I don't think a business incubator is appropriate for this property because it is supposed to be a cultural center, and that kind of takes us off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ann Thanawala, Bruce Cameron, Bill Davids.
Hi, thank you to everyone here. I know you guys have put in a ton of time, really worked hard, and it is a civic effort. So we might not always agree, but we're all doing it for the right reasons. I think we all love this city, and that goes for everybody in the audience and staff too. As far as the funding goes, I'm a little confused about the last meeting. I didn't find it, I think like many people have already said, appropriate for us to figure out how to finance that. And someone brought up at our table, I wouldn't go to a group of my friends if I need to have neurosurgery and ask them what they thought my best options would be. This is kind of like that. We're not finance experts. That being said, there are a lot of great ideas that have come up. I know that the city is looking at a lot of other projects that they're going to be funding, like a $54 million city services building, $95 million over at the city yards. The money's there. I think that we do need to look at the GAN appropriations money. We have been taking anywhere from 13 to 17% over the last several years. And other cities, according to the LAO, other cities in California normally take between 40 to 80% on an annual basis. With a $1.35 billion GAN appropriations last year, we took 13%. So that needs to be looked into. I know it's tied to the Prop 13. There's been a lot of money made there. I think we're up to $1.6 billion this year, or somewhere thereabouts, which, $100 million could fund this thing pretty easily. Thanks.
Thank you. Bruce Cameron, Bill Davids, Ann Hoover.
Bruce Cameron. I want to just echo what a few of the other folks have said, and that is a giant thank you to all of you folks on the working group and to the consultants and the staff who put this together. I think you've done a great job in terms of focusing people. I think that what's coming out of this is many of the ideas and concepts that you've come up with will be a part of the final decision. I don't believe we're anywhere close to putting together a final package. I am a CPA. I do understand a little bit about finances, and I can assure you that the financing on this is still very much an open question, and it's not going to happen without a general obligation bond. In order to get to a general obligation bond, I would caution, in particular, the special interest groups that want sports fields. They're coming out of the woodwork, and they'll continue to come out of the woodwork. This is not a project that can afford any more baubles put onto the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is about to collapse. The economics of this project are very, very sensitive, and we've heard from the open space people, we've heard from the sports field people. Just wait until we get to the council and you hear the affordable housing folks start weighing in on it. All of these baubles are going to topple this Christmas tree, and you will not get a general obligation bond passed. In particular, all these special interest groups that keep talking about we need to broaden the base to get people to vote for a general obligation bond, you're doing exactly the opposite. What you're doing is you're driving away the broad centre. They're getting very, very tired of paying for folks who want stuff for nothing. Sorry to be so crass and bold as to say that, but if you're going to get to 2/3 vote, you need to be really, really, really focused. And this particular project, this is historic. In my mind, this is the most important project in the last 35 to 40 years. It rivals, to me, the saving of the pier. This is a really, really important deal. And to get to 2/3 and load it up with narrow special interest stuff, you're going to kill it. I just am hoping you don't do it. And I hope that the fabulous work that this working group has done is going to continue in some shape or form, because you're going to have to build a very, very broad consensus going forward. And it's going to take skill, it's going to take dedication, and I'm seeing it in this group. And I want to thank you all for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bill Davids, Ann Hoover, Wen Chen.
Hi, my name is Bill Davids. I've been a Santa Monica resident for 25 years. I just want to say that I don't think we've been inventive and far-sighted enough in terms of the possibilities for restoring the Civic Auditorium. At the table today, I learned that if we could somehow circumvent the constraints of the Landmark Commission, we could essentially save the shell of the Civic Auditorium, the facade that's important to us, and basically rebuild the Civic Auditorium for $25 million less than the cost estimate for basically restoring the Civic Auditorium by preserving it. I think We have to build a state-of-the-art auditorium, a very comfortable auditorium, not an auditorium that's going to be used as a bourse for tchotchke selling like it's been over the last few years before it was closed. I also want to say that by being inventive, you have to look at landmark restorations that have been successful. 42nd Street in New York City, certain theaters were saved, certain theaters weren't saved. In one particular case, they had to move the marquee of a theater, the old Liberty Theater on 42nd Street, by about 25 feet to save the theater. In order to save the Lyric 42nd Street Theater, they eliminated the Apollo Theater that was next door to it. In Beverly Hills, when they built the Wallace Annenberg Theater, they saved the post office in front of it. We are under constraints, not just simply by the Landmark Commission, but we're also under cost constraints, and we have to do what is most practical. Also, in being practical, we also have to be holistic. I've said this a number of times at these workshops. We have not reached out to the showbiz community. There's a lot of money out there that we have not tapped, that we could potentially tap, not just within our borders. We certainly have entertainment companies and technology companies and media companies within the borders, but we also have media, technology, and entertainment companies just outside our borders. We are a tourist attraction. We have to have elements of the entertainment industry involved, not just in the Civic Auditorium, but perhaps in a build-out from the Civic Auditorium. So we have to be practical. We have to be holistic. I don't understand the juxtaposition of the soccer field with the auditorium. I think we're basically creating an odd hodgepodge of elements over here that are not necessarily going to work for the benefit of what is essentially an isolated area. Thank you.
Ann Hoover, Wen Chen.
Hi, I'm Ann Hoover. Good to see everybody. Thanks to all the consultants, to the city staff, large shout out, and of course to the working group. Really appreciate it. Want to try to be brief and just say a few things that I haven't said before. One is I am someone who does think an open space is key to getting the consensus on a general obligation bond. I can tell you the public education community gets out with their feet to help pass stuff that is good for that group and also good for the city as a whole. I'm one of the moms who tromped around and put door hangers on at midnight for the YNYY sales tax revenue, which I'm sure you guys remember. Half of that goes to the school district, half of that goes to the city, and it's been great, and I think it's brought in even more than the $12 million. So I think there's creative financing that can be done even with that. Maybe you rework YNYY and you take 10% of that and put it here. Anyhow, just a thought. Second thing, again on the field, I hope we can all as a group stop calling it a soccer field. If it's anything, it's a turf field, because then it can be much more multi-use. In its most idealistic conception, it would be a great lawn, something like you see in New York City. At our table, we were talking about how to make every single inch of it work. School district maybe uses it during the day. Parks and Rec uses it at night and on weekends. The city, X times a year has events there. It can synergize with what's going on in the Civic. Maybe community programming that otherwise would occur here gets put out there under tented facilities. You can have the art shows. You can have the jewelry show. You can have the cat show. Do that 10 or 15 times a year, and you've got an amazing space. So if you put it out there, every single inch of it can work for everybody in this town and tourists alike. So also on the connectivity with Samo High, I actually am a bridge fan. I think it would be so awesome to get a bridge. And then what do we do here? We have Santa Monica's own South by Southwest Festival. We have a jazz festival. We have an incredible classical music festival. Again, we have something, the synergies are just swarming around, and we're making money. So all of these things can make money for the city and make this vision possible. This should be a civic space, number one. Every inch of it should be for the community. Let's not turn it over to private interest, except maybe a little tiny restaurant, because I need coffee. That's all I want, is a little coffee when I come down here. The last thing is, and I apologize to you, Yao, because I said I would never bring this up again, but if this is a civic space, I do again have to question why a third of it is going to the ECEC. I'm very proud that we have an amazing community college in this town. I've taken classes there. My kids are going to take classes there.
Thank you.
It should be shrunk or relocated. Thank you.
Okay, Wen Chen. And one more is flying at me. I like late chits. Do we all like late chits here?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, my
Mike
name is
Salazar.
Wen Chen, and I immigrant moved to this country in 1979. Since then, I work at all the local store. I work at our Aaron Brothers. I work at Bob's Market on 17th Street, and I study art. And now I study making films because I have so much learning from this rich city. I create a lot of story, and it's just really true story about my son. He lost a pet, and he find a pet. Soon to find a pet, we also find love and friendships. So many producer wants to buy my story. So I feel Santa Monica should be have a film festival because we have many talented kids, and we have many talented people live here. So we have to use this location to create more opportunity for that kind of artists. And I participate in Virginia Park Pico Library hearing. I know a lot of council at that hearing that we processed for 2 to 3 years community meeting. So I'm the one who want to put the library in the park. And since then, you can see the whole Pico neighborhood are changing. Okay, so culture still go forward before any business, any professional. Here to attract all the professionals to come to here, let's say how many parking space we need. If nobody want to come, that doesn't matter. You build one space or two space. You have to attract people come. And then to do that, we have to work with Santa Monica students. Because many people donate, I don't know if you know, a lot of donation goes to Santa Monica School. $5 million for one trust fund from Pacific Palisade family. And 1 year that when school was short of money, Montana district, they all donate 20% of 40% of their income. And so it was from August to September, 2 months, the city receiving $2 million donation. So I think people would love to donate money to help students to achieve the goal, including American Film Market, which I'm the member. So everybody care about the future. What the kids can do for the community. But if it's the same thing, we need funding for this center, I think I would do my money donate to the student program instead of this function center. So we have to work with school and create a future for our kids and our community, okay?
Thank you. And Mike Salazar.
Apologize for the late chit. I just want to say I've been a bit of a one-note samba on this point, but the reason we're all here is to save the Civic, and I would really hope that we can continue to emphasize that this building isn't a pristine, untouchable landmark. The building can be added to and altered with respect to its landmark status, and I think that I'm hearing that point may be lost, but that's really important to keep in mind. I think one thing that we really expect out of this is innovation in the planning and in the finance for this project. But most important is innovation in the design. And I think the community wants in the RFP there to be a statement about the innovation in design, and that's expected in every proposal that comes forth. The master plan is is not a static document. And I think it's important that whatever the project comes forth with the Civic Center, that it be taken in context with what's happening in the city at the time. Everything is fluid. There are many other projects or related things that concern people that are here tonight that are going on in the city. We have to be careful that this is not the self-contained project, because we want to support Main Street and we want to support the existing Pico, the south side of Pico, as well as the neighborhood. So when we think about this site, it's equally important to realize that arts and culture is just as important for kids and for the community, and that in the interim, whether there becomes a play field here or a multi-purpose field, is that right now the city has budgeted to create 12 acres of new parkland at the airport as a result of Measure LC that passed in November. So I would hope that everybody would keep that in mind and get behind that effort right now, because that's going to be a 2 or 3 year effort to get most likely a soccer field there. And by then, I think we'll probably have that issue decided with what happens with this. And I just wanted to thank, again, staff and the working group. I'm really excited about where this is going to go. So, and everybody for showing up. Thanks.
Thank you. And that concludes our public hearing. And now, as our final effort for the day, we will have short wrap-up comments from the working group, and Phil Brock is dying to get to his reunion at Samo High, so he's going to go first.
I'm supposed to be giving out awards at Samo High in 3.2 minutes, so for a change, I'll try and be quick. Santa Monica Civic, first, I want to remind us, several people at several tables, I think, talked about the definition of the Civic as public land. A sports field is a mandatory part of this project, even though it isn't the renovation of the Civic per se, because it was already designated and codified by the City Council in 2005 in the Civic Center specific plan. Both the ECEC and the playing field are the only two incomplete portions of that Civic master plan. The importance and proximity to our high school and our community is paramount. It can be used, the playing field can be used as a public civic resource that will link to our cultural goals as well. The Civic Auditorium. I think my only problem right now is we're not being as creative as we should be in looking at the renovation and recreation of our Civic Auditorium. We need to take this building in the 21st century and we can look at changing a significant part of the shell, if that not only reduces costs, but more importantly, creates an auditorium that takes us to the end of the 21st century, because it's architecturally significant, has great acoustics, has great seating, and is something that will really be treasured and used by our community. We can change and improve upon what is already here. And we have gotten away from discussing that, and that's a problem for me. The need for 3 floors of underground parking. I think Mitchell mentioned earlier, and several other people have mentioned, that do we have to have 2,800 parking spaces on this property in order to make the Civic work? We have a light rail coming that will take care of the visitors from out of town, and also the visitors from the east side of Santa Monica who need to get here. With great public transportation, 3 levels of underground parking, which are the most expensive way to build parking, that money figured into this plan hurts the renovation of the Civic. And by looking at a recreation of the Civic that reduces our need to structurally reinforce and spend a ton of money on the basic concrete structure, that also creates issues. The financial arrangements should not be and cannot be our paramount objective and importance in this group. Our objective needs to be the visioning of the renovation and reopening of the Civic and activating the surrounding grounds. The City Council can look at the financing, bond issues, entertainment, cultural district, etc. after we create a roadmap for the Civic land and primarily what we felt we were charged with the first day, which is getting the Civic Auditorium open again. I'm happy to see that the thoughts of office buildings, hotels, multi-use facilities on the site have now been thoroughly discounted by the public who have attended and answered our online surveys and in person. Activity, wellness, cultural and athletic uses are the best uses of our land. A state-of-the-art Civic Auditorium for the 21st century needs to be our highest priority. And finally, let's really create a great outdoor and indoor connection with Samo High's outdoor 3,500-seat amphitheater and 1,250-seat indoor theater. And I thank all of you for coming. I'm on my way across the street. Thank you.
All right. So I guess let's start at that end then and have Linda Bozon go grab the microphone and put your mouth right up next to it as if you love it.
I think Phil's comments go directly to what I want to say.
Mouth right up next to it.
Okay, if there's nothing else that has come out of today's meeting as well as the first meeting, is that everyone has something that they want on the site. I like Bruce's comparison of it to a Christmas tree. But we, as the CWG, would be completely irresponsible if we didn't also examine how to pay for the civic restoration. That was the purpose of our second workshop, and that was the purpose of the trade-off tool. It is sad that for many, it did not achieve its purpose, but recognition of the costs, both the construction costs and the operation costs, cannot be ignored. And I hear many of the people speaking wanting to ignore it. I'm sorry to be the skunk at the picnic, but that is part of our function, as it must be, and it must also be part of the community's examination. What do you want, and how are you going to pay for it?
Frank Gruber, please.
Oh, sorry.
I'll just move up. Take Phil's place.
Right up next to it.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to say too much. I don't think, anyway. I'm spending the weekend up in Ojai for the Ojai Music Festival, and I came down for this meeting. And I just want to say I'm inspired up there because they've got this Libby Park that I guess somebody named Libby, who was from the glass company, gave it to him. So we need some philanthropist out there to help us out. I agree with everything that Linda said. I want to say the only thing I disagree with what was kind of said around here is that I haven't, to this point, I think spent hundreds of hours. I think you're exaggerating how much time we put into it at this point. It might be up to 80 or so. It's a great experience, and this meeting was a great experience. And I want to say to the people who say we should be talking to experts about financing is we will talk to experts about financing, but they don't take the place of hearing from the public. All sorts of ideas come out that you kind of digest later on. The main focus for me will be adding a few items like, if we're going to investigate plans that would allow for a full-size multi-use field, we should also investigate plans that would put, an ice rink on there too. We should, investigate a lot. And that's the kind of ideas that you get from a public process. But at the end of the day, this group has a function, and in certain ways we're lucky. We don't have to deal with the ECEC. That's, as far as this group is involved, that's a done deal. It's whether you like it or not, we're not going to be dealing with that point. That's a given for us. But we do have to come up with some kind of approach, if not a plan. We can't finance anything. We can't issue bonds issues. We can only do things like study stuff. But we have to come up at least with an approach that we hope will save the Civic and do something good with this piece of property. I've been involved personally with Civic Center plans since 1993, and if you go back and look at that document, which promised a lot to a lot of people that's not being built, but if you go back to that, the people have been struggling for decades before that to know what to do with the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. Now, it's been 10 years since that 2005 plan said put a sports field here. I don't see a sports field either. In other words, inaction is inaction. All of the wishful thinking that people have about this property and this building, just other decades go by. And what we're trying to do in this committee, I don't know if we'll succeed, but we're trying to break that pattern that goes back decades of everybody saying what they want and the city saying, oh yeah, we'll give that to everybody, and then nothing gets done. No restored Civic Auditorium, no sports field, no nothing. And so I really appreciate the support we've gotten from the people here. Hundreds of hours notwithstanding, I think you're exaggerating what we put into it. But really appreciate that support, but just try to understand beyond that what we're trying to do. We're trying to break a cycle of inaction and create something good. Or give the city an approach to do that. And please come to our future meetings, and in the fall we're going to have a plan, and hopefully we'll get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Yao?
Just a couple of quick comments. First of all, thank you all for continuing to come and engage with us because it's incredibly helpful. I do think that the input from the public, as well as all of the reports and studies that we've been provided with, has really helped us to focus down on a smaller set, a more manageable and understandable set of principles to then provide the council with a basis for going forward. It has also identified the tremendous complexity and, in fact, the weak spots in our knowledge base about feasibility. And so it does underscore, and we'll be able to underscore that to the council, that there has to be a lot of homework done, a lot of focused homework done on the feasibility issues, particularly in the finance area, so that they can really nail down what the barrier is or how high the hurdle is to obtain public support for this bond or this tax, or to find a public financing partner. All of those things, I think, need to be fleshed out a lot more than all of us can do as caring amateurs. But all of that's important for us to get out on the table explicitly, so that when we provide a report to council, it can be a balanced report that can have a lot of guideposts for them to take specific next steps, instead of just another general supportive document that really wants everything. Thank you.
First, I want to say, the diverse turnout that we experienced today was beyond what I was expecting, and I appreciate everyone's comments. There was a lot of energy, a lot of passionate comment that was made. I did learn, as I keep learning, people's feelings, and I think that a lot of good ideas came to surface today. I'm not going to go on, but that's what I got out of it, and thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. From my point of view of watching all these different workshops and starting to see some more familiar faces, there seems to be an evolution of thought that's happening, and I think that the one encouraging thing is the dialogue amongst the community itself is changing. And if I recall in the first couple of meetings, the word sports field wasn't mentioned for maybe the first few months, and all of a sudden now it's popped up in these separate conversations. I think it's a very healthy evolution that people get a chance to talk to each other. And I would encourage you that once we do give our recommendation to council, that's kind of the time to start the organization of the different viewpoints, so that whatever these ideas are, do have that community momentum behind them to get them through to the end, like Frank was suggesting. So thanks again, and I guess this is just the beginning.
Hi all, it's been a great experience, and everybody's support has been so tremendous throughout this process. Thank you all. As you know, it's our task to figure out how to save and fund the Civic, both currently and going forward. And that's essentially what we're doing. And the rest is pretty much icing on the cake. How we're going to do it, how we're going to pay for it, what's going to happen with the rest of the site, it's really all about getting the Civic up and running again. And if we could all focus on that, and that is our task, the rest of it will all fall into place. Thank you.
Yes, and I also want to thank you all for being here and sticking all the way out to the end. I have to say, through the 3 public workshops and the community meetings, I continue to learn and gather from your input, and it is so vital, sort of honing what we do and what decisions and things we've made, and I think we've been listening to that, and I continue to listen to what you're bringing. The statement often is tossed around of we're not the experts, but what I really appreciate is that the community holds great expertise in what it is to live and be here in Santa Monica, and what it feels like and what it is, and that's what we're looking for, is understanding your expertise, and the diverse expertise of that really helps us and has helped hone closer and closer to what we're going to bring forward to council. So thank you.
All right, and I'll wrap up. Everyone sounds like we're done, but we're not. We still have a few more meetings and some final reports to create. But one of the things I just wanted to put out there is when we started this and we were figuring out, okay, so we have 18 months, what are we going to do? It kind of became clear pretty quickly that what we were going to do was run a public process. And so we structured the whole thing around these 3 workshops, and we spent months before each workshop sending our staff and consultants out to find us information and answers and background, and structuring all the information that we had and figuring out which of that information we would present to the public at the workshops for specific feedback, with very specific goals of what we wanted to get out of it. And the second workshop in particular was really, I think, something really new in Santa Monica. You know, I think there was a lot of really interesting feedback today about how we didn't really have any business asking regular people about finance. And you guys have never really had an opportunity to participate in that aspect of it before. That's usually the part that comes after the visioning between council and whoever they're going to do the project with. And that's a business thing. And we got to really understand that. And we may not all exactly agree on what we envision for that site, but I think we're all on the same continuum now. I think we all understand exactly what the forces are that are going to affect what ends up happening there, and what we need to do as activists to get the thing we want done. If you want something that is going to cost a lot of money and not make a lot of money, you know that you need to help get the city to organize itself around a way for some kind of outside funding. If you're more comfortable with a cultural center that has some built things that will generate funding, then you know what you need to do. And we're all on the same page. And when we all go to council with our guidelines and your activism, everybody's going to say something that's relevant to exactly the decision that city council is going to do. And we're ready. We're going to be ready. And that is a really cool thing. And, we don't have outliers on the conversation. Everybody has something to say that's really specific to the right decision that's on the table at the time. So to me, that's really exciting. And, we've really come a long way. And I look forward to seeing what happens next. And with that, I think maybe somebody should move adjournment so we can all use the restroom.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And if you're missing your parking ticket and you want to go home, using this is better than driving through the poll.